I get mad when I see you looking like you drugging and thugging.
The storm began the moment a video surfaced of Kodak Black on stage in Texas, February 23, 2026. A clip that seemed small at first, but would ignite an entire cultural conversation about respect, leadership, and accountability in hip-hop. In the footage, Kodak is late, 9 hours late to be exact, and when he finally arrives, he is wobbly. His crew steadying him like a child, every moment captured by fans filming on their phones. Psychologically, this resonates because it's not just a performance misstep. It's a breach of expectation. Fans don't just buy music, they buy the persona, the confidence, the image of a leader who embodies strength and reliability. Seeing him falter, seeing him human in a way that clashes violently with his public mythology, triggers a cocktail of emotions. Disappointment, fascination, schadenfreude, and concern all at once. It's the same reaction that hits when any icon shows cracks in their armor. You feel it in your gut, even if you never met the person. Enter Boosie. Timing matters in cultural warfare. And Boosie saw his opportunity. The internet had already passed judgment, but he didn't simply comment on the clip. He elevated it into a statement. 2 words on Instagram, nothing more, nothing less. Dude need help FRFR. Those words were a scalpel. They cut through pretense, through the noise, and struck at the heart of Kodak's perceived infallibility. Now, some critics immediately called it clout chasing, opportunistic trolling designed to get engagement. But that reading misses a deeper layer. At a human level, Boosie was responding to fear, to concern, to a reflection of himself seeing someone he respected unravel. He didn't just see Kodak. He saw a mirror of the pressures, the exhaustion, the battles that come with leadership in hip-hop. A world where visibility is total, privacy is a myth, and missteps are broadcast as evidence of weakness. The viral clip spread like wildfire. Comments flooded in, oscillating between ridicule and empathy, between mockery and worry. Dude needed help, some wrote. Others clowned him relentlessly. And while Kodak's team attempted damage control, calling it a bad camera angle, the narrative had already escaped their grasp. Once the internet decides, it rarely changes its mind. Boosie's post hit at precisely the right moment. The public had already absorbed the clip, and now it had a voice that articulated what many were thinking but afraid to say. Then came the escalation. Boosie didn't leave it at a 2-word post. He went live on Instagram, breaking down the moment with the kind of emotional intensity that makes a narrative cinematic. He described what he saw, not as an outsider, not as a troll, but as someone who had lived the life Kodak was living, a reflection of himself in another man's unraveling. He spoke of respect, disappointment, and frustration, layering each point with insight that made viewers understand this was bigger than a simple jab. This was a commentary on leadership, vulnerability, and the cost of being a figurehead in a culture that demands perfection. Psychologically, Boosie's approach lands because it taps into a universal truth. Admiration is complicated. When someone we look up to falters publicly, it challenges our own sense of belief, our loyalty, and even our self-reflection. Seeing Kodak stumble hit different because it mirrored fears of failure, loss of control, and public exposure. Fears that everyone in some way carries. Boosie understood this, and he weaponized it. Not in a shallow way, but in a manner that forced the audience to confront the human reality behind celebrity mythology. Culturally, this moment is layered. Hip-hop thrives on perception, on bravado, on the illusion of invincibility. A stage wobble, a late arrival, a viral clip. These are minor infractions in private, but in public, they're seismic. Boosie's commentary reframed the clip, turning it into a narrative about accountability and leadership. He wasn't just mocking. He was exposing, analyzing, and forcing conversation. The stakes became clear. Respect isn't just earned by talent, it's maintained through consistency, presence, and control. Any fracture, no matter how small, becomes ammunition in the court of public opinion. By the end of that live, the audience was hooked. Fans and critics alike were analyzing every nuance, the timing, the phrasing, the subtext. This was a masterclass in narrative framing. Boosie positioned himself as the truth-teller, someone willing to speak uncomfortable reality, while Kodak remained the figure under scrutiny, vulnerable yet untouchable in spirit. The tension built not from confrontation but from the stakes involved. What does it mean when a generational leader shows weakness? How does culture respond when admiration and judgment collide? And perhaps most importantly, what responsibility does one have when witnessing the fall of someone they respect? And this was just the beginning. The narrative threads extended far beyond a single clip. It set the stage for confrontation, dialogue, and escalation, creating a story that was no longer just about performance. It became about ethics, generational leadership, and the human cost of fame. Psychologically, it resonated because we see ourselves in these moments. Culturally, it resonated because it exposed the fragility behind the facade of power. This was not viral entertainment. It was a mirror held up to a culture obsessed with both spectacle and truth, admiration and accountability. So, by the end of clip 1, the story was no longer about a shaky stage or a delayed arrival. It had become a study in power, perception, and consequence. Boosie's 2 words were more than a post. They were the spark that ignited a debate about authenticity versus performance, respect versus spectacle, and human vulnerability in a world that demands perfection. And that, ultimately, is why this clip hit so hard and why the world was watching.
Hey, bitch, you need to get in the gym, Kodak. But you ducking all on stage. You ducking. You finna fall out on stage.
Even Boosie admitted later that his words might have landed harder than intended, and that moment of self-awareness only amplified the tension. Psychologically, it resonates because it's rare for public figures to show vulnerability while still holding power. Most double down or delete the post. But Boosie didn't retreat. He acknowledged the sting, signaling that he understood the weight his words carried. At a human level, this lands because it mirrors how we all grapple with regret and responsibility after speaking truths that cut too deep. Critics might argue this was an overreaction, a clout move gone too far, but that misses the point. This was about accountability, about witnessing someone he respected unravel in public and responding in real time. The emotional intensity wasn't performative. It was real, raw, and uncomfortable. And that's why, even in admitting he went hard, Boosie didn't apologize or backtrack. He doubled down on the truth of what he saw, setting the stage for the inevitable confrontation that would follow, forcing the culture to reckon with authenticity, respect, and public exposure.
Anything I say, I stand on. You should know that, bro. I kind of went too hard on you, bro. That's me, man. I was mad at you.
Kodak had been watching from the sidelines long enough, and by March 7, 2026, he decided to take control of the narrative himself. He didn't send a subtle message or comment on a post. He crashed Boosie's IG Live uninvited, midstream, and made his presence impossible to ignore. This was not a friendly call-out, it was a declaration. He demanded a public apology, he demanded accountability, and he made it crystal clear that he was not here to play games. Psychologically, this resonates because it's primal. Kodak was reclaiming control over his own story, asserting dominance in a culture that equates visibility with vulnerability. For fans, it landed like a punch. A generational leader confronting someone he saw as both ally and challenger, live, raw, and unfiltered. Boosie, of course, had his own stakes. He didn't flinch, didn't cower under the weight of the moment. This was a man battle-tested through Angola, cancer, federal court, and every trial in between. But Kodak's interruption wasn't just a personal confrontation. It was a cultural event, a live demonstration of how public perception and private reality collide in real time. At its core, this moment hit because it wasn't just about a viral clip. It was about respect, legacy, and the human instinct to protect your reflection when the world is watching. And when the smoke cleared, everyone realized this wasn't Instagram drama anymore. It was a high-stakes negotiation of power, ego, and cultural authority unfolding live in front of millions.
Yeah, y'all don't even know what's going on, so why y'all speaking on y'all don't know.
Kodak's message during that live was surgical, precise, and unrelenting. You don't know what's going on in my world. You don't have the full picture. So why are you putting my business out there for everyone to pick apart? Those words landed like a hammer, framing Boosie as the provocateur exposing private battles to public scrutiny, while Kodak emerged as the man trying to reclaim control over his own narrative. Psychologically, this moment resonates because it speaks to a universal tension. The world is watching, but nobody ever truly knows the whole story. Every fan, every critic, every comment is filtered through perception, gossip, and incomplete information, yet people act as if they hold the truth. Kodak's argument cut through that noise, exposing the cruelty of judgment in a digital age where vulnerability is currency and mistakes are magnified into spectacles. At a human level, it hits because everyone understands the fear of misrepresentation. When your struggles, your stumbles, or your worst days are broadcast for judgment, it feels like an invasion, a violation of the boundary between personal life and public persona. By calling this out live, Kodak wasn't just defending himself. He was issuing a warning about respect, privacy, and accountability. He made it clear that airing someone else's flaws is not neutral commentary. It's a power move with consequences, one that can shift alliances, reputations, and even legacies. Critics might argue that Boosie was merely speaking truth to power, or that social media demands blunt honesty. But Kodak's stance highlights the nuance. There is a line between observation and violation, between critique and exploitation. Data from cultural trends shows that audiences respond differently when they perceive authenticity versus manufactured drama. Kodak's insistence on controlling the narrative underscored this distinction, framing himself not as fragile, but as a leader setting boundaries. The tension wasn't just emotional, it was structural, a clash of principles in the battlefield of modern celebrity. And culturally, the moment lands because it reflects a larger truth about power in the digital age. When influence is measured by followers, visibility, and viral moments, missteps become public property, and private struggles are treated as communal entertainment. Kodak's insistence that Boosie step back from judging what he cannot see reframes the conflict. This isn't just a personal beef. It's a commentary on the ethics of public scrutiny, on the responsibility that comes with cultural authority, and on the cost of visibility. For the audience, it's both shocking and relatable. We've all had moments where our lives felt dissected by strangers, and watching someone as prominent as Kodak demand respect and boundaries resonates deeply. By the end of this exchange, the stakes were clear. Respect isn't optional, privacy is precious, and crossing lines publicly invites consequences.
You snitching. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of...
Kodak didn't just speak. He wielded words like a sword, and in hip-hop, that carries weight far beyond the screen. When he called out Boosie for violating him in public, he was signaling something deeper than insult. This was a line crossed, a boundary breached, and a warning sent straight into the culture. In hip-hop, calling someone out like this is street-level authority. It's a declaration that certain moves are intolerable, that private struggles are not public fodder, and that respect demands recognition, not ridicule. Psychologically, it lands because it taps into our innate understanding of territoriality and reputation. When someone challenges your personal domain, especially in front of millions, the response must be immediate, decisive, and symbolic. And that's exactly what Kodak delivered. Boosie, of course, was unshaken. He's the kind of figure who has faced Angola, battled cancer, and survived federal court cases. A surprise IG Live crash wasn't enough to make him fold. His calm, measured defiance sent a message. He knew the stakes, he understood the rules, and yet he refused to retreat. At a human level, this resonates because it's rare to witness vulnerability and resilience collide so publicly. Fans were captivated not just by the spectacle, but by the layered dynamics. Two seasoned figures with intertwined histories, each defending principles, egos, and legacies in real time. The tension escalated as Kodak made it personal and precise. "Stop playing with me on this internet. We have to be real." Those words were not performative. They were an attempt to recalibrate the hierarchy, to assert control over a narrative that was spiraling. Boosie's response, however, wasn't surrender. It was strategy. By standing firm, refusing to apologize, and asserting that his words were deliberate and meaningful, he reframed the confrontation. He turned Kodak's demand for accountability into a public negotiation of values, authenticity, and respect. Culturally, this moment hit because it was raw, unfiltered, and lived. This wasn't a scripted diss track or a press release. It was real-time negotiation of power, authority, and perception. The stakes extended far beyond two men. The audience, the fans, and the wider hip-hop community were all watching, analyzing, and taking sides. It became a case study in modern celebrity conflict, where visibility equals vulnerability, and where reputation is both fragile and fiercely defended. Critics might argue that Boosie was reckless, or that Kodak's reaction was overblown, but both interpretations miss the underlying truth. This exchange was a collision of legacy, culture, and human psychology. Words, when wielded with intent, are weapons, and both men demonstrated mastery of the battlefield. Kodak drew the sword, Boosie stood his ground, and the culture locked in, watching as history unfolded live on social media. The lesson is clear. In a world where every action is amplified, every misstep dissected, and every word remembered, authenticity, courage, and the ability to hold your ground define not just survival, but legacy.
Stop playing with me on this internet. I swear to God.
Boosie refused to budge. What he said, he meant, and no IG live crash, no public pressure, no viral spectacle was going to change that. That moment marked a turning point. This was no longer just online chatter or casual clout posting. This was a live confrontation between two men with a shared history, 3 years of tension, and reputations built on resilience, skill, and raw authenticity. Psychologically, it lands because the audience could see every layer: ego, respect, fear, and admiration, all colliding in real time. Watching it unfold, fans weren't just witnessing a beef. They were seeing the very anatomy of a cultural power struggle laid bare, and the stakes were unmistakable. To understand why this confrontation hit so hard, you have to rewind. The shaky stage video in Texas in February 2026 wasn't the beginning. It was a spark atop years of intertwined histories, collaborations, and competitive energy. In 2023, a single collaboration between Boosie and Kodak had shifted perceptions, planting seeds of rivalry beneath the surface. From that point forward, every encounter, every comment, every social media interaction carried additional weight. By the time Boosie stood firm against Kodak's uninvited intrusion, the world wasn't watching just a single feud. They were watching a multi-year saga of trust, betrayal, respect, and generational leadership. When Kodak pulled up unannounced, demanding an apology, it wasn't just a personal challenge. It was a test of authority and cultural relevance. He wanted the world to see that he would not tolerate misrepresentation, that he demanded accountability, and that he would defend his narrative at any cost. But Boosie, the battle-hardened veteran who had survived Angola, cancer, federal court, and countless public trials, responded with surgical calm. He shut down the apology demand in real time, refusing to waver, making it clear that he had no intention of revising his assessment. This juxtaposition, Kodak's explosive demand versus Boosie's unwavering composure, created a tension that was both cinematic and psychologically gripping. At a deeper level, this clash resonates because it taps into a universal human experience: the fear of public judgment and the instinct to defend one's truth. Everyone has been in a position where their flaws, mistakes, or vulnerabilities have been exposed, and the reactions vary. Some retreat, some apologize, some double down. What makes this cultural moment exceptional is the stakes. These are figures whose reputations influence an entire community, whose decisions ripple across fans, peers, and the industry. The confrontation became a masterclass in human behavior under pressure, displaying how pride, principle, and perception collide in a very public arena. The live exchange also reframed the concept of authenticity in a digital era. This was no longer about clout or viral moments. It was about who gets to define the narrative when perception and reality diverge. Critics might argue that both men were performing for the camera, but anyone watching closely could see the nuance. Boosie's refusal to retract, Kodak's insistence on public accountability, and the tension between private struggle and public scrutiny. These dynamics aren't just entertainment. They are a mirror for a culture grappling with the amplification of every flaw, every misstep, and every human moment. As the confrontation unfolded, the stakes went beyond social media. This was a test of legacies, a battle for cultural authority, and a lesson in the ethics of influence. Fans and commentators quickly recognized that this wasn't merely a personal feud. It was an examination of modern celebrity, leadership, and the cost of visibility in a world that demands perfection. Psychologically, audiences connected because they could see themselves in the conflict. The fear of misjudgment, the weight of scrutiny, and the courage required to stand firm under the gaze of millions. By the end of this confrontation, the narrative had evolved. It wasn't about the shaky Texas stage anymore. It was about resilience, accountability, and the human cost of fame. Boosie's steadfastness, Kodak's demand for control, and the culture's obsession with witnessing the collision of two generational figures transformed a viral moment into a historic event. Social media had amplified every action, but the truth lay in the measured defiance, the courage to face scrutiny, and the raw, unfiltered humanity on display. And that's the lesson this moment leaves us with. In a world where every misstep is magnified, where every word is weaponized, and where legacy is constantly under review, authenticity, courage, and the ability to hold your ground define not just survival, but cultural immortality. So the real question is, in a culture that devours every reflection, every crack in the armor, who will survive the mirror, and who will be exposed for the world to dissect?
And I ain't gotta clean my face for nobody, Kodak, bro. I'm a gangster. Like, bro, I don't gotta clean my face for nobody.